Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Sue Nolder and I'm the head of the Shepparton campus of LaTrobe University. On behalf of Mr Andrew Fairley AM, Chair of the Sir Andrew and Lady Fairley Foundation, the Fairley Foundation members, Professor John Dewar, our Vice-Chancellor of LaTrobe University, my LaTrobe University colleagues, and our Regional Advisory Board members here this evening, thank you all for joining us for our annual Fairley LaTrobe lecture. This year's lecture is titled Manufacturing, Agribusiness and Trust, How Australia's industry is alive and well and living in the country. It is to be presented by Alison Watkins, the Group Managing Director of Coca-Cola Amatil, one of Australia's largest food and beverage manufacturers, and, of course, proud owner of Shepparton's iconic organisation, SPC. It is so fitting to have Alison speak at our Fairley LaTrobe lecture, as the Fairley family has such a strong connection to SPC. And just to note, the lecture will be recorded and loaded onto our website. Firstly, I would like to commence by acknowledging the traditional owners of this wonderful land on which we are gathered here this evening, and I pay my respects to our elders, both past and present. We will continue to work together as one to improve outcomes for all members of our communities. Now, I would like now to acknowledge the following guests who are with us this evening. Mr Andrew Fairley AM, Chair of the Fairley Foundation, and Andrew's partner, Ms Natasha Bonus. Professor John Dewar, Vice-Chancellor of LaTrobe University. Councillor Seema Abdallah, Deputy Mayor, Greater Shepparton City Council. The Honourable Damien Drum MP and the Honourable Wendy Lovell MP. Councillor Shelley Sutton, Greater Shepparton City Councillor. Mr Peter Quinn, Managing Director of GV Water, and Peter's wife Debbie. Mr Matt Sharp, Acting CEO of GV Health. Mr Adam Furphy, Council Member of LaTrobe University, and Adam's wife Jeannie. Mr Ross McPherson, Councillor Member of University of Melbourne. Mr John Head, Chair of Shepparton Art Museum Foundation. Ms Rebecca Coates, Director of Shepparton Arts Museum. Ms Cheryl Hammer, Executive Officer at Fairley Foundation. Mr Carrillo Gantner, AO, previously a speaker at our Fairley LaTrobe lecture, And of course our guest speaker this evening, Ms Alison Watkins, Group Managing Director of Coca-Cola Amatil, and Alison's husband, Rod. And of course a very warm welcome to everyone here this evening. It is a wonderful privilege for our community to have Alison with us to deliver the 2018 Fairley LaTrobe lecture. Goodness. Alison has an outstanding record of leadership in many large and diverse organisations, and we look forward to hearing from you, Alison, shortly on your journey and how well SPC will be placed heading into the future. Over the years, LaTrobe University has enjoyed a strong connection with SPC, with many of our students and graduates gaining employment in the areas of accounting, finance, HR and engineering at SPC. The opportunities for our students increased as SPC became part of Coca-Cola Amatil, even allowing some of our graduates to gain positions in their Sydney office, and that was pretty exciting at the time. Even though we'd like to keep our students, most of our students here, it's nice to see them go away too and hopefully come back. These local connections leading to endless opportunities. This is just one example of how important SPC is in our region, let alone to the Australian economy. Now, just a little bit about LaTrobe Shepparton campus. Here at LaTrobe Shepparton, we're extremely positive about our future. With a strong commitment and support to regional campuses from our leadership group, led very ably by our VC, Professor John Dewar, and with backing of our local organisations, government bodies, health providers and our community leaders, we have been able to successfully introduce a number of new students at our campus very recently, which directly relates to professional careers in this region and beyond. At LaTrobe, we are determined to give access to higher education to all members of our community, as well as assisting in the needed growth of our professional workforce. The most popular of our new courses at the Shepparton campus have been Bachelor of Early Childhood and Primary Education and the Bachelor of Human Services Master of Social Work, with an enormous increase in applications this mid-year compared to mid-year last year, which is really pleasing to see. In addition, we have built excellent collaboration with GoTAFE across the road there, resulting in greater pathways for our community to pursue their careers, particularly in the areas of nursing. This is extremely important given the significant expansion currently underway by GV Health. With our new courses combined with the success of our existing courses, we now have urgent need for more teaching and learning space. Our LaTrobe leaders are currently lobbying all levels of government for support to build an extension to our campus. This is a necessary addition that will allow us to continue to grow into the future and to meet the needs of our community as they unfold, as the extension having a multiplying effect on the economy also. Similar to SPC, LaTrobe is always endeavouring to be ahead of the game in relation to innovation and customer needs. LaTrobe's recent learning and teaching plan quotes, "Design an innovative academic program that is relevant and responsive to the needs of students, industry and the community, and that priority must be with academic support to improve the progression and completion rates of all students." LaTrobe has invested heavily in this important objective for it to become a reality. At a regional level, I see that we are making huge progress, working closely with all our LaTrobe colleagues and our local industry, community partners, ensuring our courses are at the cutting edge and industry focused. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Andrew Fairley AM, who will introduce Alison. Andrew is the great-nephew of Sir Andrew Fairley and is extremely driven and committed to making a difference in this community. Having been the chair of the Sir Andrew and Lady Fairley Foundation since 1999, Andrew and his co-trustees have continued the work and philosophy of Sir Andrew to use philanthropy and innovative partnerships to make Greater Shepparton a vibrant, safer and more tolerant society. The vision of the Fairley Foundation is to drive momentous social and cultural change in Greater Shepparton. They are certainly doing that and being involved in programs across a broad spectrum of the community, including education, the arts, leadership, social justice and disadvantage. Andrew is ably supported by the Deputy Chair, Carmel Johnson, and a very committed group of trustees who are our extended family members. In addition to his role as chair of the foundation, Andrew practices as an equity lawyer in Melbourne, is chair of EquiSuper, a $15 billion industry super fund, is a director of the Australian Financial Complaints Authority and sits as an independent director on a number of family company boards. He also carries on the family's long tradition in the fruit industry and is a commercial cherry grower in the Yarra Valley. He recently stepped down as chair of Parks Victoria and deputy chair of Tourism Australia. Andrew, on behalf of LaTrobe University and the community of Greater Shepparton, thank you and the foundation for your relentless pursuit to support so many causes that are making a difference in our community and well beyond. So thank you so much. And now it's my great pleasure to hand over to you, Andrew, to introduce our guest speaker. Thank you, Andrew.
You want to take it? Well, thank you, Sue, for that very generous introduction, and I won't trouble you with all of the welcomes that Sue has already given us, other than to reinforce the acknowledgement of country. I do particularly want to welcome the trustees of the Fairley Foundation that are here this evening, that are such a huge support to me and everything that we try to do in the Fairley Foundation in driving towards that vision that Sue just shared with you. It's a real pleasure for me to be able to welcome you all tonight at this, the 8th one of these Fairley LaTrobe lectures, and it's really had its genesis in the notion that we wanted to celebrate everything about regional Australia and what it has achieved, regional Australia, what it is achieving now, and regional Australia in terms of where it's going and where those opportunities are, and what contribution it will continue to make in the broader church of the civil society in Australia. And it's a tribute to both the commitment of Sir Andrew to this region throughout his life, and the commitment that LaTrobe University has to regional centres right throughout Victoria. And I want to express my thanks, as I do each year, to John Dewar, the Vice-Chancellor of LaTrobe, for the single-minded commitment that he has driven to their regional strategy, when there are other universities that wanting to step back from any commitment to regional centres. It's great to see LaTrobe taking a really proactive role. The civic leaders of Shepparton for a long time wanted to make Shepparton into an educational town or city, and much was done during last century. You might remember some of the peregrinations that took place then to try and induce universities to come here. Well, after a few false starts, it was LaTrobe that really stepped forward and made a commitment to operate a fully fledged regional campus to both service the higher education needs of this area, of this community, but also to be a magnet to students in other parts of Victoria and internationally to come and experience their education in a thriving regional community. And as Sue has said, the organisation of LaTrobe in this building started in 2010 when the building was built, but it's actually now running out of its space, I think 5 years earlier than was anticipated, and they're looking to build or commit to a $20 million building, 4 stories, that'll be built out the front there to house perhaps other educational institutions, but to expand the opportunities for students at LaTrobe in this area. And I think it's vital that the whole to the whole of community of Greater Shepparton that LaTrobe is here, because research clearly shows that graduates from LaTrobe, this is LaTrobe University's research, that graduates from LaTrobe's regional campuses are much more likely to remain and work in the cities in which they study. And the LaTrobe graduates are already forming the backbone of the professional workforce in the Goulburn Valley, and with an expansion they will continue to do that. So, I mean, if it sounds like I'm a walking billboard for LaTrobe, I plead guilty. Tonight's lecture is really significant from Shepparton's perspective, as Sue has foreshadowed, as it falls in the centenary year of the establishment of SPC, and we're really honoured, Alison, that you've been able to find time in your incredibly busy schedule as the CEO of Coca-Cola Amatil to come and give this lecture to us tonight. I know that much has been said of the early years of the SPC cannery and the challenges of its establishment in 1918 that were presented to a courageous band of fruit growers who shared this vision of the need to have a cannery in this city. And I hope you'll humour me a little to just share a couple of stories that I've been able to glean in relation to that time. It was recorded in the biography of Sir Andrew Fairley, which we published 3 years ago to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Fairley Foundation, called The Big Sheppartonian. And it was indicated that there was a recognition in 1917 that there needed to be a cannery built in Shepparton because there'd been 3,000 acres of orchards planted in the immediate vicinity of Shepparton, but nobody had really given it much thought to what they were going to do with the fruit. So a meeting was called in April 1917 to discuss the establishment of the factory and to take what fruit they could so that they could sell it on international markets. And that meeting led to the decision to establish the Shepparton Fruit Preserving Company. It had a nominal capital of £24,000, and which were broken up into 24,000 shares of £1 each. And the initial company had 136 shareholders, most of whom had 50 shares or less. That was a lot of money in those days. And some had 100 shares. And you'll be happy to know that both Andrew Fairley and his brother, Fred, my grandfather, took 100 shares each and were enthusiastic supporters of the project. And obviously then the Victorian government lent them a vast amount of money so that they could build the facility, and that was opened in March 1918. And in the first year, it canned apricots, peaches, pears, figs, plums, tomatoes and nectarines. How's that sounding, Alison? Want to get back? No. So in the first year, SPC made a loss in its operations, and the shareholders were asked to stump up a bit more capital. It also made a loss in the second year, and again the plaintive cries came to shareholders to put more funds into this fledgling cannery. By 1921, the business was in crisis and its viability and future looked grim. Is this sounding familiar? It was then that the board of directors decided they needed a leader, and they asked Ab Fairley to go onto the board and made him the managing director. And it seemed from that time things turned around, whether it was his impressive financial skills or management decisions that ought to have been made that weren't. And by 1924, the business had turned a profit of £42,000, so it was back on track. For the next 40 years, he stayed at the helm of SPC and built the business and the brand to, as Sue said, become an icon of Australian food, but also to become a homegrown Shepparton success. And it's really from that success that Sir Andrew established the Sir Andrew and Lady Fairley Foundation when he died, and set in his will the requirement that the charities that are supported by the foundation but a precatory wish that they are within 20 miles of the Shepparton GPO, that beautiful building that's no longer with us. And but there's still another one. And so we've done a number of things. We do a number of things, as Sue said, but one of the things I do want to talk about is the leadership role that we seek to play in philanthropy in this city. In the past 3 years, we've organised 3 philanthropic summits in Shepparton to bring to the city a number of the country's major foundations, and a number of you have been involved in those, to enable them to share some of the information and the background and the landscape at a socio-economic level of what is happening here. And we're hosting a further philanthropic summit in August this year. And if you think that there's a relevance to your being at that, it's really all about building on the success of the last 3 events and working through what are the really key wicked issues that we now need to turn the philanthropic minds of this state to. But in addition to that, I want to make a big announcement tonight, and I'm hopeful that you will be delighted about this. We're announcing tonight that the Fairley Foundation, together with the Goulburn Valley Community Fund, is creating a new foundation in Shepparton, and it's going to be called the Greater Shepparton Foundation. And the reason that the foundation is being formed is to open the opportunity for a broader universe of charitable giving to a wider audience, and to enable a full tax deduction to be gained in respect of anybody who wants to support it, who's generous enough to want to give us some funding for the projects that it will do. It will be what's known as a PBI, a Public Benevolent Institution. That is a DGR1 for those of you who are anal and want to understand what the Tax Act says. That means it is a foundation that actually delivers straight into the need. The Goulburn Valley Community Fund does not have that status. It's what's called a DGR2, and that really limits its growth capacity. So the Goulburn Valley Community Fund, once we've finalised the Greater Shepparton Foundation, that will merge into the Greater Shepparton Foundation, and that will then become essentially the centre of our philanthropic activity. The Fairley Foundation will continue to operate, but will do its PBI work, its necessitous circumstances funding through that. So you'll hear much about that over the next few months and years as we progress it. But I wanted to. It's such a significant issue for us at the Fairley Foundation and also for the Goulburn Valley Community Fund that I wanted to share it on such a special night as this. So let me now focus on the real reason that we're here tonight, which is to hear Alison speak and to give the Fairley LaTrobe lecture for 2018. I've been fortunate to know Alison and Rod for many years, and it's been principally in social circumstances. Alison's an extremely accomplished corporate leader, having led a number of significant organisations to great success. Yet one of her endearing qualities is her humility. Unlike other CEOs in the ASX landscape, she doesn't seek out the limelight. She's strongly committed to the culture of the organisation that she leads, and she's always looking to find innovative ways to enhance the performance of her employer. In a rare interview that she did with the Australian newspaper only a few weeks ago, which I might say was a half-page headline which says, "What makes Watkins tick?" She shared some of her philosophy, and she said that the crucial success points of her career were the 4 Ps. They were people, partnerships, parents, and personal. And she went on then to speak in the article about some of the extraordinary, insightful mentors, and they had really been impactful on her that she'd worked with in the various roles that she has held at a very senior level. They included John McFarlane when he was the CEO of the ANZ Bank. They included Doug Shears when Alison worked as his CEO at Berry Fruit Juices. They include David Gonski when he has been the chair of Coca-Cola Amatil and now the new chair there, Alana Atlas. She is a giant in the world of CEOs in this country and a wonderful role model for women. Her skills, her drive, and Douglas Shears told me to say, and her persistence have ensured that there is no such thing for Alison Watkins as a glass ceiling. Would you welcome Alison Watkins with me?
Well, thank you very much, Andrew, for that very generous introduction. Somewhat stretching the truth, I'd have to say, but I appreciate your kind words nonetheless. And congratulations also on the formation of the Greater Shepparton Foundation, which is a wonderful step for this community and yet another tangible demonstration of the Fairley Foundation role and leadership for Shepparton. So thank you. I want to also welcome distinguished guests. I want to welcome everyone. I particularly want to thank the immediate and extended SPC family who have very kindly come along and boosted the numbers and under no duress at all. So really, really lovely to have everyone here. Thank you very much indeed. I also want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and pay my respects to their elders past and present. I want to do 3 things this evening. First of all, to celebrate the achievements of Sir Andrew Fairley, and secondly, to celebrate rural Australia and its continued vibrancy and contribution to local and global markets. And thirdly, I'd like to offer what I hope are some optimistic views on the nature of Australian consumers and how business, and particularly SPC and Coca-Cola Amatil, are responding to those changing needs that we're seeing. It's very much in food and beverage about wanting it fresher, wanting it healthier, and wanting it now. And, by the way, not quite trusting that we'll actually do it, particularly if we're a big brand or a big company. So these do pose some pretty important challenges, and I look forward to discussing our thoughts on how we can respond. Country Australia is, I should also say welcome to my husband, Rod. It's actually very nice of him to come along. He doesn't normally do it, I have to say. So thank you, Rod. Country Australia is a topic close to my heart. I grew up on a farm in Tasmania. I helped my dad in the shearing shed and driving the tractor. I really built what's been an enduring connection with farms and farming. I met a lot of characters and hard cases, as my dad would describe them. And I also got very interested in economics and politics. My father really stayed pretty close to the markets and was interested in business himself, and he tried to instill that in us kids. One year his birthday gift to me was a parcel of shares. Another year it was a shotgun, and I'll let you speculate on which was most successful, what was most relevant for my business career. After school, I studied accounting, and then I moved to the mainland, as us Tasmanians call it, with Rod, leaving my dreams of marrying a farmer behind, sadly. I forgot, he's here, isn't he? Whoops. I know at the time it felt like I was heading for a big city life. However, there's no doubt that because of my background, I've really gravitated to roles that are connected with rural Australia, including being the head of regional banking for ANZ, working with Doug Shears as CEO of Berry, and then subsequently CEO of GrainCorp and now Coca-Cola Amatil. So these roles have really given me a lot of opportunity to get involved in shaping our policies and also influencing, I hope, some of the investment decisions that are going on to support a strong and vibrant agricultural and food processing industry. But whatever the contributions ordinary Australians like me have been able to make, they certainly pale against the passionate focus on rural advancement in particular that we saw from the Fairley family, stretching back, of course, to Sir Andrew Fairley, whose family originally started out owning what's described as a large emporium here in Shepparton 100 years ago, and who have been so instrumental in the early days of the Shepparton Preserving Company. I think most people here would be aware of the role, of course, that SPC has played in Shepparton's history. The founding of SPC was hailed across the nation as a sign of rural vitality and optimism. The Age newspaper described the new SPC cannery as a triumph of decentralisation, the first of its kind to be located near growers rather than being in a major urban centre. It featured American-built can-making equipment. Canning itself, of course, was a major innovation and still relatively recent in global terms, and the first household can opener had only been invented 40 years prior to the establishment of SPC. And even in those first formative years, SPC aimed very high on quality. There was a good-natured poem that was penned to that effect and published in The Age. I think it's possibly the only poem ever written about tinned fruit sorting. And it was written from the perspective of an anxious grower delivering supplies to the SPC cannery, and maybe there's some people in the audience who can relate to this. As he sits upon his lorry waiting to approach the door, where his fruit has been rejected, he's trembling to the core, and his nervous strain is painful as he prays to the unseen, Lord, in mercy, I beseech thee, be it neither marked nor green. Take that load home to your orchard, for it cannot enter here. So he drives away in silence, shedding one salt, bitter tear. The early years, of course, for SPC contained plenty of challenges, as we've just heard. Even back in the 1920s, SPC was fighting the battle against cheap imports. It wasn't Italian tomatoes or Chinese fruit back then, rather a flood of cheap, badly preserved American produce that undercut SPC's sales and damaged the reputation of tinned fruit as a household staple. After extended losses, as Andrew has explained, the company sought a business manager and attracted Mr. Andrew Fairley, who was a shareholder and part owner of the local department store. And the board, after quite a lot of persuasion, convinced him to advise on finances. Mr. Fairley stipulated that he'd do so, but only on one condition, that he not be paid for his advice. By 1923, of course, he became the chairman and managing director, And as Andrew mentioned, he refocused the business so that it returned to profitability within 2 years. I was trying to do a mental calculation, and I think the profitability that you said, about £42,000, back then would translate to a single year profit of about 3.2 million once he turned the business around. And I can tell you 3.2 million would look quite good to the current management team. A contemporary describing Andrew Fairley said that, and I really like this quote, said that anyone who wasn't satisfied with his efforts at SPC must be that breed of Scotsman who died and found himself in paradise, where he straight away began to find fault with his halo. So, I wonder if at the time Andrew Fairley knew how important he would be to SPC and how important SPC would become to him. He took on many important roles, including Commissioner of the State Electricity Commission for about 20 years. However, the cannery and its people were a constant in his life, and he developed a deep expertise in fruit canning and Australian primary industry. In 1951, he was knighted in recognition of this expertise and dedication. And by the time he died at the age of 81, and still serving as the company's leader, he'd turned a modest factory and a weatherboard shed into a cannery with an international reputation. So this year, as you all know, SPC celebrates 100 years, or as I'd like to put it, Australia celebrates SPC's achievement. Now, aside from the 1960s, when peaches and ice cream were at the peak of their popularity, things have often been a long way from peachy at SPC. From a profitability and growth perspective, our iconic and popular brand has had to cope with a litany of political, environmental and social challenges, including a constantly changing consumer. And definitely some of the toughest times the organisation has faced has been over the last 8 or 10 years under our ownership, as we've seen demand for processed fruit fall away as a result of changes to consumer taste, and also a market that's been flooded by cheap imports. In early 2014, it was clear that in order to ensure SPC was going to be part of our Australian culture for another 100 years, the business had to transform. And with this realisation, both Coca-Cola Amatil and the Victorian government embraced the spirit of Sir Andrew and committed to an investment of $100 million here in our facilities at Shepparton. With this investment, the prospects for Australia's last remaining fruit and vegetable processor were strengthened, along with around about the 2,500 jobs this facility supports in the Goulburn Valley. I really want to thank and commend the Victorian Government for understanding and investing in the importance of food processing for Victoria, and especially recognising the benefits that rural communities get through having processing and the focus on quality that drives for local producers. Today, of course, Business Victoria's Regional Manufacturing Clusters initiative, I think, is a very inventive approach to supporting manufacturers of any size to innovate, develop capability and grow, and it will boost jobs and boost investment in the state. It's also exciting to see new government funding for developing regional Victoria, including a very significant investment for LaTrobe Valley, for regional centres in general. And I think this gives us cause for optimism and confidence in the future of regional Victoria. Since 2014, we've embraced that opportunity to transform to be the business that we need to for a secure future for SPC. While our much-loved Goulburn Valley peaches and pears, our Ardmona tomatoes, our SPC baked beans and spaghetti are still core to who we are, we have new products, innovative products like ProVital, and most of our older products, our core products, have received an extensive makeover. Our 100-year milestone's a massive achievement in the face of many battles over the years, and I think you could really say that SPC is the Aussie battler that digs deep and keeps reinventing itself for the future. So this fresher, healthier, and I want it all now mantra from consumers. Let me turn to that and describe a little bit of how we're responding at SPC and across all of our portfolio at Amatil. First of all, I want it fresher. Our expectations of how we shop and what's available when we shop have changed dramatically. Increasingly, the long weekly or fortnightly shop for most households is gone, and it's been replaced by the nightly, just-in-time purchase of ingredients for dinner. And what we expect to find when we go to the store or the supermarket every night is the same. We want high-quality, fresh food. How many of us have gone to the supermarket, dashed in, and come out hugely frustrated because the avocado wasn't perfectly ripe? And we want assurance that our food is fresh and of high quality. Even if it's processed, we want a more natural option, such as we're seeing with fermented products and cold brewed teas and coffee. Notwithstanding sort of occasional issues with berries and rock melon, we in Australia are fortunate that we've never had the serious food scares of other countries with mad cow disease or widespread outbreaks of salmonella or bird flu. Many of us in this room grew up with processed foods which were absolutely seen as reliable and safe. In my family, I remember very clearly the annual Fowler's Vicola ritual of bottling all the surplus fruit from the orchard. And then manufacturers like SPC, of course, have made that possible for everyone to enjoy great quality fruit all year round by doing what my mum did in the kitchen on a massive scale and with very high efficiency. Back in those days, in fact, consumers saw fresh as a pejorative. It was equated to perishable and variable quality. But the paradigm has certainly changed. Fresh enough has become never fresh enough, and preserved and processed has become something of which to be wary. A recent and very significant global survey found that the most desirable attributes for consumers in modern food are freshness, naturalness, and minimal processing. Food safety remains an issue, but it's no longer beneficially associated with preserving and processing. Indeed, the public now sometimes associate processing with lower food safety compared with fresh alternatives. So that's a challenge for everyone in food and beverage processing. I, of course, have seen the incredible immediate freshness of SPC's fruit, which comes from our growers and comes straight into our plant and then is immediately and professionally and lovingly prepared and packed for distribution. In SPC's first 100 years, we emphasised our quality, our reliability, consistency, and we built one of Australia's longest lasting manufacturing operations by fulfilling that promise. The challenge for us in the next 100 years in SPC and in food and beverage generally is how to convey the orchard to table goodness and the practical benefits of our comparatively long life products. It's a tough new standard, and we might wish for the magic touch of the late Sir Andrew Fairley again in attaining it. But I'm very much an optimist that it can be done and we will do it. And I need only point to the way that SPC is reshaping itself through innovative fruit-based offers like Perfect Fruit, which is our healthy frozen soft serve, ProVital, which is perfectly suited for healthcare and hospitals, and also the way that we're now going about introducing premium fruit products into China. Within our core range, we've put a renewed focus on highlighting our provenance. Consumers want to know how and where their food and beverages are produced, and we're delivering that with country of origin campaigns and even GPS markers on our beautiful Goulburn Valley packaging, which tells the consumer exactly the orchard location where their fruit was grown. Consumers also want to know that their fresh food is environmentally sustainable, and again, SPC's at the fore. Last year, we dramatically improved our water efficiency at the Shepparton plant and reduced our water usage equivalent to 135 Olympic swimming pools of water in the year. And these are just some examples. So overall, I think SPC is well placed to focus on fresh in our own way while still delivering the benefits that we stand for as Shepparton Preserving Company. This is an approach I think that's being replicated across country Australia and across our food and beverage manufacturing sectors. And I think there's good reason to be optimistic that Australia, by virtue of our clean green image and our willingness to reshape the way we work, can build another century of success with a focus on satisfying these new consumer trends. Of course, freshness isn't everything, and insights from market research also tell us that good health is a consideration for well over 60% of people when they're grocery shopping. At Coca-Cola Amatil, we've been moving over a number of years to match this trend by offering choices in portion sizes and variety of our beverages through a wider portfolio. And this is really driving a lot of innovation in our business as we reduce sugar, increase functionality, and improve the better for you attributes of our products. We've definitely heard the message loud and clear from consumers on the need for a focus on sugar and well-being. And we're also trying to do a bit of myth busting along the way, because the good health debate, of course, is occasionally hijacked by some rather hysterical commentary. For example, there was a recent current affairs program which claimed that sugar consumption was akin to smoking, part of a campaign in support of soft drink taxes as a quick fix to obesity. And certainly it makes a catchy news piece, but it is wildly inaccurate. There is no comparison between sugar and tobacco. Tobacco in and itself is harmful in any quantity. Our beverages are not, and they can be enjoyed as part of a balanced, active and healthy lifestyle. The argument for a soft drinks tax itself is also a little misleading. Just 2% of the average Australian's kilojoule intake comes from soft drinks, and that proportion is falling. In 2017, the ABS reported that consumption of added sugar has declined since 1995 quite significantly, with a 6% drop in adult consumption and a staggering 23% drop in the consumption of added sugar for children. And I think that's a credit to vigilant mums and dads around Australia who are succeeding in changing the habits of the consumers of the future by cutting back on the daily intake of sugar in everything from breakfast cereals, milkshakes, soft drinks and ice creams. It also reflects the Australian food industry, who are listening and hearing these consumer demands and producing more low and no sugar options in everyday foods. Despite these gains, though, of course, the news is negative on obesity. Sugar consumption's down on 20 years ago, but over the same period, obesity rose from 19% to 26% of Australians over the same period. It's the same story in the US over that same period. Sugar consumption down, obesity significantly up. So it seems pretty clear that neither sugar or drinks sweetened with sugar are the major cause of this obesity rise, yet somehow we seem to get locked onto this debate around sugar tax as being the solution. The fact is, as I'm sure we all appreciate, that the contributors to obesity are many, and it's a complex equation. And we certainly don't see that sugar taxes are the answer, and we are concerned about the impact that it would have on Australian manufacturing if governments chose that as an easy way out, which fortunately at this stage our government and opposition have no intention of doing. We do, however, very much believe that we have a role to play, and we are very committed to playing it because we know we can make a difference. 4 years ago, we made commitments to play our part by increasing the availability of our small pack sizes, offering more low and no kilojoule beverage options, and providing more transparent nutrition information. More recently, we've committed to reducing the sugar content across our beverage portfolio by 20% by 2025. 20% reduction is an ambitious target, but we're determined to hold ourselves to account and achieve that, and we're pleased with the progress that we're making. We know we need to do a lot more, and particularly to think and act in respect of specific groups in our community, such as Indigenous groups. And we work very closely at the moment with our customers in remote Indigenous communities to do things like adjust price so that we reduce the price of bottled water and low or no sugar drinks relative to full sugar choices. On products, we make sure that the low and no sugar options are available and given prominence in the stores. On promotions, we develop culturally appropriate marketing materials and ones that respect the history and identity of the communities where we're operating and promote healthier beverage choices. And on partnerships, we're working very closely with the local retailers to shape purchase decisions when consumers are in store. So, for example, in quite a number of our remote Indigenous communities, we have the low and no sugar beverages in the fridge, and the full sugar beverages are warm on the shelf. At SPC, our syrups no longer contain sugar and instead use natural fruit juices and coconut water. And of course, it isn't just the product that consumers are demanding have healthier attributes. They also want to know that producers and manufacturers are sustainable in every way. They want to take into account ethical sourcing and environmental impacts in their purchase decisions. So at Amatil, we're challenging ourselves really hard on packaging, and this is a big one for us. But we've committed to a goal by 2030 to ensure that for every bottle or can that we make, one is collected and recycled. And this is going to involve a lot of changes for us, including to how we design our packaging, how collection infrastructure works in the countries that we operate in, and also recycling. Over Christmas last year, we were proud to join with ANZ, Telstra, and other leading corporates to pre-purchase the output of what will be Victoria's largest wind farm, Murrawarra, near Horsham. Committing ourselves to renewable energy, but also obtaining that at rates below those which are currently available through standard commercial arrangements. So I really believe that if we as a nation, through companies like us, and there are many, many others doing as much and more as we are, if we can work to create shared value in this way, where we're doing things that are good for business and good for the communities that we operate in, then we really do have a wonderful future and a very strong competitive position to look forward to relative to the rest of the world. Let me touch now briefly on the I want it now consumer theme. So 10 years ago or so, the concept of same-day delivery for anything apart from a pizza was almost non-existent. However, as we all know, technology has rapidly driven online purchasing, and we've also seen a tremendous rise in the ability to deliver and fulfil in very short timeframes. We're seeing it through marketplaces like eBay or Gumtree, transportation like Uber, food delivery services, home services, beauty. On-demand apps are permeating more and more categories. A recent survey by McKinsey found that almost a quarter of consumers are willing to pay a premium for same-day delivery. So there's a really, really strong consumer desire for wanting it now. Businesses as diverse as the iconic Amazon and Dan Murphy's are perfecting the art of the last mile to consumers through easy-to-use platforms, added convenience, and the delight of almost instant gratification. We're also playing our part, not only through serving the convenience needs of our customers, but through providing much more convenient pack formats. So the smaller packs, which are growing rapidly. And at SPC, of course, part of our significant investment here at Shepparton has gone into more convenient packaging formats, in particular cups and more recently pouches. So together this demand from consumers for wanting it fresher, wanting it healthier and wanting it now is having and will continue to have a transformative impact on the operations of Australian food and beverage manufacturers. The opportunities for innovation, the need for the highest quality of products and natural ingredients, improved methods of packaging, faster supply of the ideal product for the consumer, all of those forces and opportunities to innovate will only continue. So we, as manufacturers, must strive and thrive with this pace of change. And every day, of course, we also have to strive to earn and re-earn consumer trust, because trust is everything when it comes to what you put in your mouth and what you serve your family. The overload of social media now that we see is having a real impact on changing people's views. So big brands, if you think about it, were a proxy for trust and reliability. Increasingly, social media means that they're portrayed as being out of touch and even sometimes dangerous to your health. Small local brands can enjoy sudden cachet as the latest and best, but we all know that trust takes time. I always tell my kids that it arrives on foot and departs on horseback, and it's true everywhere. So trust is a very precious thing, and a trusted brand like SPC is something that is truly hard-earned, hard-won over 100 years, and something that we absolutely stand by and continue to value and will continue to value. You might remember, of course, the hashtag SPC Sunday social media campaign in early 2014, when there was a chance that we may have to close the Shepparton facility. And that community-led campaign, which was initiated by a consumer up in Newcastle, it generated thousands of tweets, millions of impressions, and Facebook friends for SPC. And over 4 days, supermarket shelves were emptied and sales absolutely boomed as families sat around their tables on hashtag SPC Sunday and rekindled their love for a proudly Aussie brand, whether it was spaghetti, peaches, tomatoes, everything. SPC was suddenly on fire. I wish I could say that it continued, and I guess the reality is that consumers weren't buying into SPC as much as they were buying into hope and nostalgia. However, it absolutely does demonstrate the connection that a brand creates, the affection that a brand creates, and the trust that comes from decades of consistent delivery. I think there's a couple of really important things that companies like us must continue to do to keep earning trust. And one is absolutely to do as you say and be upfront about the challenges and obstacles facing the business. That was Sir Andrew Fairley's approach when he was persuaded to take on SPC. And that was our approach in 2014 when we highlighted the financial issues facing the company and committed to the reinvestment plan with the Victorian government. Another way to build trust is to recognise the importance of stakeholders beyond our shareholders. So whether those are our growers, the broader community that we operate in, our customers, our people, all of these stakeholders, and making sure that we're doing the right thing by that broader group as well as for our shareholders is extremely important in building trust. Because it's demands from consumers and their uncompromising expectation that they're met, plus the broader stakeholder group that sits at the heart of our social licence to operate. Andrew Fairley and the founders of SPC 100 years ago can be very proud of their legacy, and there's much that we need to do to keep it alive. So, can Australian manufacturing deliver against all these expectations? Well, I'm definitely an optimist. I have a passionate belief in agriculture and our food and beverage manufacturing capability, so absolutely, I say yes. If you think about it, give or take a few years, SPC, Coca-Cola Amatil, and the Federation of Australia are roughly the same age. We've all grown up together and we've all changed and continued to innovate together. The Australia of today isn't Henry Park's Australia. Our progress as a nation, our position in the global economy, and the aspirations of contemporary Australians is something to celebrate. The SPC of today isn't 90 women making 36,000 dozen cans of fruit for Australian households for the year. It's pro-vital to the Australian health facilities. It's premium exports to China and Moroccan-flavoured bean snacks to Australians. And Coca-Cola Amatil is a very different organisation to what it was 100 years ago, as we've moved from tobacco to printing to Ethiopian stamps, believe it or not, chicken, poultry, and now beverages. During this 100-year period, all three of us have had many challenges, but we're all still going strong because of our ability to change and adapt. And for SPC and Amatil, we've done this by staying close to our consumers and working our absolute hardest to make sure we deliver. And I believe this will continue to drive us for the years ahead. Thank you.
Alison, thank you. That was just amazing. Amazing in terms of its historical connection, but its optimism for the future. Alison's agreed to take some questions. So if there are any issues that are burning that you'd like to address to the CEO of Coca-Cola Amatil, now is your chance. Anybody? Yes, Peter.
Alison, the move by supermarkets to do away with brands and have their home brand, and you're talking about the value that we all see in a brand. How do you see a method of preventing that trend?
Yeah, it is challenging, and I think it is very clear that the supermarkets are trying to rationalise the number of SKUs that they're carrying. And really, I think if I think about our customers, they do want to carry at least one brand, and it's a different thing by different categories. But certainly there is clearly a role for strong brands, and in our categories it may be more than one, but the important thing is that it's a brand that has a reason for being, that has a point of difference, and that consumers want to buy. Because in some ways I think, supermarkets look at themselves as having a certain amount of real estate, and they want to make sure that whatever's sitting on their shelf is turning over, consumers are buying it, and they're generating a return on that real estate. So in the conversations we have, we feel confident that by really making sure that our brands, and I think there's no question that brands like SPC and Ardmona do have an edge. They stand for Australian, they stand for quality ingredients, and I think there are many consumers, as well as the heritage, which is an intangible but nonetheless hugely valuable. There are many consumers who want that. The challenge for us, of course, is always that it's getting the premium, the price that consumers will pay for Australian grown. That can be challenging. Our facility here is much smaller scale than some of the big operations in South Africa, for example, or Europe, where a lot of the imports come in. So they're able to achieve a lot lower cost per unit, and that can be a challenge. But I think it's a challenge that through the investment we've made, we are now much better placed to respond to. So we can be much more competitive, and we have these other benefits which I think are real, and we need to continue to invest in to make sure that we're communicating well. And I think, you know, we are very proud of our SPC's team, the work they do around marketing and branding, the innovative way they've used social media, as well as some great TVCs, is a really important part of how we communicate those benefits and make sure that we continue to earn our place on the shelf, even where brands are being rationalised.
Other questions? Yes, down the back. There's a roving mic on its way.
Thank you. You mentioned China very briefly. Could you tell us what you are doing to enter or expand your business in that growing consumer market? And is the government helping?
Well, I'm going to look at Reg, and he'll sort of, I'm sure, frown at me if I answer incorrectly. But what we're doing, I think again that, I mean, it's sort of easy to get your stars in your eyes when you think about China and, you know, 1 point however many billion consumers, and if they all ate one can of, you know, whatever, that it's not the way it works. So our team have really started from understanding the market and working back and saying, okay, what segment of Chinese consumer is there for whom our products would appeal and have relevance? So how do we target the right product, the right communication, the right social media strategy? How do we find a really good partner? And we're working with China State Farm, who actually I don't know if the government own them. I don't. Reg is saying yes. So I guess they're helping us, but not for free, I can say that. So they're our partner, and they're extremely experienced and well connected to the kinds of customers that we believe SPC products and Goulburn Valley products are best suited for. So we've got quite a small range going into China, but it's really about establishing our credentials and leveraging very much the Goulburn Valley clean, green Australian story. It is going to be a slow, steady task, though, I believe, because for the Chinese consumer, processed fruit is not necessarily something that many of them understand or buy. So the convenience aspect, I think, for example, of our snacking options is something that as those consumers start to value that more, creates opportunities. The team have also got a really good e-commerce strategy. So we're partnering, for example, with JD.com, and because online is just huge in the cities that we're participating in. So yeah, we're excited about it, but yes, it's a slow and steady and doing it right, which is absolutely the approach to take, which our team are doing.
I think we've got time for one more question. Yes, Peter.
I can probably shout loud enough, Alison. Alison, as a Coca-Cola shareholder.
Oh dear.
Each time I walk into a supermarket in the last, 18 months at least, I think, there have always been large promotions for particularly decarbonated products. You know, we're not sort of talking about a one-off promotion each 6 months or something where there seems to be a limited amount of product. What we seem to be seeing is almost perpetual promotions, you know, 50% off, you know, 45% off or whatever. Is that a result of just trying to keep up the unit, keep the units up and accepting sort of a less of a unit price for them, and sort of how long can that squeeze?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for your support as a shareholder, and I hope you appreciate the dividend. Doing that. So,
I could comment on that too.
yeah, look, it's a conversation that we have with our customers a lot, because obviously the customers, we work together with our customers to decide promotional strategies. But I think when you walk into a supermarket, you know, you see 50% off pretty much on every end. So those aisles all have massive displays, and you know, you see these very, very significant levels of promotion across many, many categories, and certainly our category, it is something that the consumer has become accustomed to. So, you know, for those particular products, the vast majority, unsurprisingly, of what we sell is sold on promotion. Now, for us at Coca-Cola Amatil, we are very clear that our focus, we want to focus on revenue, we don't want to focus on volume per se. So, and this is a very important shift that the Coca-Cola Company have made, and I believe a really important one, because I think the name of the game in our industry is not selling more volume, and indeed that can be exactly the wrong thing to do. And I think the right thing to do is to make sure that we've got a really good mix, a good range of, as well as having, you know, low and no sugar products right across our categories, smaller offers, more premium. So some of you may have seen some of the beautiful heritage glass Coke offer that we had in supermarkets over Christmas time. And so there's not necessarily a focus on volume, but we've really got something that's special and different and that the consumer is prepared to pay for. Our customers also, the supermarket customers, if you're a shareholder in Coles or Woolworths, you'll know that they've been struggling to grow their top line as well, because we've had this very significant sort of deflation. Prices have just been going down. So I believe when I hear what they are saying, and when I know the way we want to work, that we will over time move away from this. But at the moment, it can be becomes a bit of a dilemma, because it's sort of like, well, who's going to go first? And then for the supermarkets, they also are very focused on Aldi, on online players, and they want to make sure that they're still very competitive for their consumers. And we know Australian consumers, many, do care a lot about price. So I think we all recognise that it's something that we want to reduce over time, and we're taking some steps towards that, but it is a bit of a bind to break out of it, and it will take a little bit of time and some gradual steps, which can't come soon enough.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alison. Would you please join with me in thanking Alison Watkins for tonight?
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you.
I'm now going to introduce the very distinguished Vice-Chancellor of LaTrobe University, John Dewar, to make some closing remarks, and again to thank Alison for her amazing address. John.
Andrew, thank you very much, and always delighted for you to be a living billboard for LaTrobe University, and thank you for your very generous words earlier this evening, and thank you for your continued leadership in the Goulburn Valley region. And I think, as Alison said, it's a wonderful announcement you've made tonight about the new foundation, so congratulations. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet this evening and pay my respects to elders past and present. Alison, thank you so much for what I thought was an absolutely fascinating talk. It is wonderful to hear from someone leading an organisation that continues to play such a central role in the Shepparton community, especially in its centenary year. And I just think it's fantastic that in this year of all years, it's been you who's been able to deliver the Fairley LaTrobe lecture, and a characteristically brilliant thought by Andrew Fairley to invite you to do that. So thank you very much. At LaTrobe, we celebrated our 50th anniversary last year, and we certainly hope to be here in Shepparton in our 100th birthday year, 50 years or 49 years from now. But I'm certain that we will only be able to do that if we follow your lead in transforming what we do in response to changes in consumer trends and demand. Please put your hands together once more and thank Alison for delivering such a fantastic address.